Well, good morning, everyone. Just fresh off the nightliner. About a half, 2/3. Yeah, mathematics was never really my strong point. Please give a warm welcome to the Architecture in Helsinki. So, how many people are we still missing?
2.
Just 2 at the moment?
Yep.
But there have been more, right?
We used to be 8, now we're 6.
So the whole slimlining thing, it's come to Australia as well.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Economic rationalism.
But I mean, everyone was a little bit confused in the first place because obviously with the Dear Howard government, the collective is not exactly the first thing that you would think of when you think of Australia, right?
That's right.
So how does one come into this form of organization for a band, or what is it?
Yeah, we're a band. We're a band more than a collective. I mean, within the band, we all kind of are really into engineering and production, and we're all total music nerds. So, I mean, within what we do, we all do a whole lot of other stuff, but architecture being the main thing that we do together.
Now, this whole collectivism or band with loads of members and interchanging members in various projects seems to be a pretty popular thing in Australia and New Zealand as well. Do you reckon there's a particular reason for it?
Southern air.
The ozone layer?
It's the southern air. I don't think there's anything really common about that.
I think, I think it's just good to, I mean, we come from Melbourne and there's a lot of great musicians and producers in Melbourne, and so it's always, you want to be able to collaborate with your friends and with people that you haven't worked before and do different things, and that just sort of happens organically, I think, so it's great. When you sort of, it's also because with touring and whatever, with the band, we spend a lot of time in the same, just the same people and whatever, so it's nice when we have the chance to do collaborations with different people. It kind of opens things up. And
but before we go into greater detail, maybe it would be a nice thing to introduce yourselves and give us a bit of an idea of what it is that you do within the formation.
Sure. I'm Cameron. I kind of am like project coordinator of some sort. I kind of write the initial ideas for the songs and sing and do other bits and pieces. I guess that's the thing with our band, we all kind of multitask. And yeah, that's me.
I'm Gus. I play lots of instruments in the band and get big-headed about the way I think things should sound. And I also do lots of other production with other people in Melbourne, collaborate in other bands as well. So,
I'm James. I play various instruments as well, and I'm also involved in recording and production of our songs and also other artists.
And my name's Sam, and I'm pretty much straight up just a musician in the band. I'm the bass player. And we won't go into it.
Sam's a dilettante hip-hop producer as well. He's very shy about it, but watch out.
So you don't have to feel set back that you're just a musician and don't dabble in 800 different fields then.
and that's definitely dilettante.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
It sounds like air conditioning on the mic.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it, but whoa, like loads of subs here. Oh, it's gone. Ah, hooray.
We just went through customs at 6 a.m. this morning, so we were a little bit slow. So keep the ball rolling for us.
Okay,
Dustin, that would be great.
Keep the ball rolling, keep the nightliner rolling. I don't know, this whole nightliner bit it's probably the least appreciative about being in a band, is it?
If you've ever been through Canadian customs, yes.
You had to do that this morning?
Yeah.
There was no
Any
body,
fun?
there was no body cavity. It was all above board.
Sorry.
It's all
So, how long are you going to be on this tour, and how long have you been on it so far?
Forever.
This tour is about 4 months from start to finish.
6, 8.
Yeah, we've probably about 8 months of this year. In effect, we're touring for 8 months this year.
And when is it that you actually get to do music?
Yeah, that's the
outside of
thing. It is actually not recommended if you want to retain creativity in your life. Your creative bones are kind of disabled as hard as you try, and as much as you try to say that you're going to keep producing music, and you know it becomes increasingly hard to force yourself to try and keep that part of your brain working. You end up just watching TV.
Sorry. So there you are on the tour bus all the time. Then there's all these people who theoretically could do all these various different things. How do you, once you get to recording, because you still do need some sort of a business card in form of a record or an album or whatnot, how do you manage to, I mean, there's quite a few cooks in the kitchen there.
Well, we were going to talk about what was the first single off of our new album, and as kind of as a way of talking about how we work in terms of producing and whatever. So maybe we could start with that.
Okay, and we go into older bits and bobs.
Yeah, just sort of how
okay.
we went from
Okay,
the
cool.
initial idea to the various
Yeah.
demos and recording and
So-
whatever.
It's actually the only song we've ever written on tour, which is an interesting side note.
Actually,
with this song.
We couldn't decide whether we have no idea how familiar people are with our music. So we were deciding whether people wanted to hear the finished track first, and then we would go back and talk about how we wrote it, or whether you'd rather wait until the end and start from the demo stage. So does anyone want to vote for hearing the finished track first?
Basically what we would do would
Two,
be
okay.
what we would do would be to play like all the influences on the production and the song and all the background behind the song, and then we would play the original demos, and then we would play phase 2, phase 3, then the final track, and then some of the remixes that have been done and the collaborations we've done with other people on the track. So should we start from before the track?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
start
Okay.
in the beginning.
So
there was light.
as a concept, this track started out being, it was just something we wrote and came up with, walking down the street or whatever. And we try and keep a happy balance, a medium between working in kind of like on the computer realm and working in a more traditional realm. We're all about trying to make the computer recorded music have an element like as a band we like a sound. We're all hugely into dance music, and we're all come from like whatever, like a rock background. So I think that we were always trying to fuse together that the sound of sequenced music but playing it live, and that's something we're really conscious of not doing on the record when we recorded, and particularly on this song, was giving it that dance music vibe but having an organic feel to it. So
life, and it's not just sequenced to the shit.
yeah, so I mean, initially the idea for the song came from the song Brown Girl in the Ring was like one of the initial influences, and in particular, I don't have the actual version, but Alan Lomax, I don't know if everyone knows Alan Lomax, who's a field recordist, American field recordist, who went around recording.
But that's been quite a while ago.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I mean, people claim it to be like the first recordings of
Oh,
popular
yeah,
music.
that's right, yeah, that's right. And to us, like, I mean, the way he works as a musician, or as as an artist or whatever he is, as a documentarian, is really inspiring in that he goes out to these like native communities and records, music and song in its most pure form, and it's before there's any notions of like commercial gain or anything. So in a way, it's like to me the most inspiring music, because it's music that comes from somewhere that's completely from the soul, and there's no other motivation for making it. In actual fact, the version we're going to play isn't this is recorded by Alan Lomax, but it's not the original version, which was the inspiration. But it's Lord Invader, who's a calypso singer, and this is from a recording that Alan Lomax did of Brown and Go in the Ring, which is a traditional Caribbean, like a schoolyard chant or a folk song. And this was a recording done in New York in the 50s by Alan Lomax.
That was absolutely. That was like drinking 4 coffees for me. I had 4 coffees already, and that woke me up about twice as much. So next, maybe can we play the Hello Black?
Well, so basically there was like a few different things elements that we were kind of trying to draw together in doing this. And I guess one of the other things was the production of Trevor Horn, and in particular the Art of Noise, a 12-inch Moments in Love, and he was a huge influence on us in the making of our music at the moment, in just the drum sounds and the synth sounds that he uses there, how they're all just sound like they're recorded in 5.1 times 7. Something about he has so much depth in all his
he
production.
likes it minimal,
Yeah. So,
VHX before there ever was a cinema.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's kind of like the a bit of the contextual soup that we're trying to make this track out of, and I guess.
But I mean, writing a track is not exactly a cooking show. You're not sitting there and it's like, oh, here's one we prepared earlier.
Well, we're just setting the scene, I guess. So what would happen is during the time we were writing this album, Cameron had just moved to Brooklyn, New York, and the rest of us were in Melbourne. So the way we went about writing and arranging the album was Cameron was sort of writing melodies and lyrics and then doing little demos and emailing them to us, and then we would all work on our own little contributions to the arrangement, and then that would slowly sort of get assembled in the studio, and then from there we went on to, after we'd actually demoed everything a couple of times, into the studio to do the final recording. So we're going to try and find Cameron's first demo of this song.
Why did you leave Fitzroy in the first place?
Just change of scene, just a new creative challenge, I guess, to be making music, in a new environment, a new city, new place, new people. Just a challenge, I guess. Yeah. It's pretty easy to be very comfortable in Australia. The quality of life is kind of not too dissimilar to being here. It's like, it's relatively cheap to live, and the climate's amazing. Actually, probably better the climate than there is here. But yeah, it's a pretty easy place to be creative. So I guess I wanted to just put all of us in a position where we were like having to try new things and do work in the way that we hadn't worked before.
Actually, the oldest song on the album. So that's actually that demo, which is the earliest one we have with us today, is actually already quite close to the finished recording. And actually, that demo actually formed the basis of the final recording that we did when we recorded the album in New York.
How many people were there involved in recording this actual demo then?
Pretty much everyone. Yeah, the 6 of us.
6 people. James was recording this in a home studio setup that he has, and with as you could probably hear, or any purist would hear, that the reverb on there is like not out of the box. It's from a plate reverb that James seems to have acquired, which takes up about half of his house. So he has this plate reverb, which is about as big as that window at the back of the room, and weighs about how many kilos?
It's a couple of hundred.
Yeah, it takes a lot of people to move it. So, So I mean, that was like the initial kind of recorded demo version.
So it has a lot of percussion, sort of like there was banging a basketball recorded was originally the kick drum, and then there was recordings of Gus hitting a tin can full of water, and gum nuts, which are an Australian fauna. Plus, there's some fake steel drums there, courtesy of the Roland JV 1010, the cheapest Roland synth, and a firm favourite of ours. We ended up getting an amazing steel drum player from an original a Trinidadian steel drum player who lives in New York to play on the album, on the final version, but we ended up keeping both because there's definitely something really cool about the artificial steel drums. It's totally, seriously. Maybe it's because we listened to Trevor Horn so much.
He did laugh when he heard them.
He laughed at us a lot.
Yeah. It was a pretty amazing experience actually getting this guy to record the steel drums. I guess when we first met him, we were about to play a show in New York, and last summer I wanted to learn how to play the steel drums, so I went about trying to find like a community steel drum band that I could learn with, and I found the New York Steel Pan Network and contacted them and talked to them about getting lessons, and the teacher basically told me that it was, if I wanted to buy a steel drum worth playing, it was going to cost me like $5,000 or thereabouts, and then the lessons were going to be like, $100 a lesson, so I kind of opted out of it. But a few months later we revisited it and found this guy Patrick Davis who plays on the record, and he was this like complete virtuoso and had been playing since he was 4 years old, and just was a complete freak. Like, we played him the song once and he just laid down, he basically soloed over the whole track, so we actually have about 15 minutes of him soloing to the track, and we only used like 2 parts, so it's kind of like one day we'll release a 12-inch version which just has a 6-minute steel drum solo. But the experience of recording that and being in the studio and actually, in Australia there's not really, there's probably about 5 steel drum players in Australia, so being in a studio with an engineer and trying to work out how the hell we were going to record a steel drum was definitely an experience in recording this, because we had no idea how to record or how to make it sound, so that was a kind of definitely a interesting part of the production of this song.
We should have called Van Dyke Parks, but none of us had enough courage.
Yeah. So then I guess so like pretty much a great deal of the percussion, some of it, the basis of it is recorded. We sample a lot of the sounds into Roland SPD S's, and they're all played out live. There's very little sequenced or programmed drums on it, so like we wanted to keep the vibe of the percussion very live, and and then we wanted to have big arpeggiated swirly synths and crazy effects all over everything, and it was the kind of song that when we were mixing it and when we were in the studio with it, that it kept growing and growing and getting more and more ridiculous each time we mixed it. So I guess this is where it ended up after all. This version.
Thank you.
Yeah, those merciless speakers.
Yeah, they sound great. I have little ones at home. They're about a quarter the size of those. They're great though.
So when you do write the stuff, obviously you got so many people involved, and someone somehow needs to take some sort of lead in orchestrating everything, or even maybe conducting or whatnot. Like, how can one imagine that actual process?
Too many creative minds. You can't imagine it. Yeah.
I think when it works, a lot of the time it's sort of organic, and generally you find you may have a disagreement about the way something is going to work or the direction that you could go, but 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10 it just becomes evident which one is working better. And so 9 times out of 10 it's organic. And 1 time out of 10 we defer to Cameron. Because basically they're his songs, so it kind of, it means that we can have a tiebreaker basically. But yeah, it is when there's a lot of people in the band and a lot of people who are really interested in being involved in production and have a lot of ideas. It goes from totally insanely joyous to quite intensely tense. But that's a beautiful thing, I think.
Yeah, no physical violence. So the next part of the process for us, I guess, is collaboration and remixing with other artists. And with this track, I think at the last count, there must have been about 15 versions of it. From everyone from like some guy who I found on the internet who lived in northern Sweden and did some like really crazy like Nick Cavey kind of cover of it, all the way through to like some of the other ones were played by people like A-Track and DJ Rupture, who have done really great mixes and versions of the song. For us, that's always been a really super important part of the collaborative process and the songwriting process. And for us personally, to learn a lot about production is, it's the best way to, meet other people who are into what you're into and broaden your horizons, get new ideas about, everything from programs to how to write a good, or how to make a good drum sound. So yeah, for us in the process of this song, the remixing was probably where I learnt the most about.
When you say you meet them, is this including actually really sitting down with them people, or are you just exchanging files?
A bit of both. It's funny, like some of the people I've we've been in email contact with for like a year and never actually met them. Like A-Track, like I have, when you have back and forth email things and you've got the number of how many times you've talked. I've talked to him like 60 something times on email and I've never actually met him. And I know, like
you're missing him by 3 days or so.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's kind of like that weird thing with the internet where you create these relationships and friendships with people that you never actually meet, and it's like in some ways like they can be really close friends, but you don't actually have the reality of meeting them. But
Which sometimes that helps. Stay friends.
Totally.
Is that coming straight from the people who are straight off the tour bus then?
We smell a lot. Can I just quickly, I don't think we mentioned Chris Cody, who was the engineer who did the final recording and mix of the album with us. So after we'd done all those demos, we were then on tour for about 5 weeks with a band called Clap Your Hands Say Yeah. And then at the end of that, we went to Chris's in fact, about 10 days before the end of the tour, we still didn't know who we were going to record the album with. And we found Chris Cody through MySpace and hit it off. And we were incredibly lucky because it was really a meeting of ears at his studio, which is just a small studio that he runs with Dave Sitek, who is part of TV on the Radio. And they're kind of two total freaks that have this little basement studio where they do all sorts of crazy stuff, like feed drugs to young impressionable bands, so they'll do what they want. That's Dave's production style. But anyway, that was an amazing experience, and Chris is a genius. He's also mixed Grizzly Bear and recorded the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Blonde Redhead, Chick Chick, etc. So definitely, look him up. He's great, and thanks to Chris.
When you do record that stuff, you've been mentioning Van Dyke Parks quite a lot, and he was also, apart from an arranger, pretty much a studio nerd as well, and there's some albums which are probably almost unlistenable to like a regular listener, whereas the music nerds would just go totally crazy and like, oh my gosh, the recording here, and like the one with the tour bus in America, or like
Discover America.
Yeah, it's like it's more an audio play than an actual
Yeah, oh, that's a party album. But yeah, his which was a song? So one of them was being offered 2 for 1 when it was released because it did so badly.
Soul Cycle, Warner Brothers pumped so much money into the making of the album, and when it came out, it was so unaccepted by mainstream commercial standards that there was an advertisement run in Rolling Stone which had an offer saying if you buy Song Cycle, you get 2 copies for free. And it turns out that a lot of people hate that record, but I mean, to a lot of people, it's like one of the most inspiring things I've ever heard. So,
and that's not that bad because nowadays you buy a CD, you get about 50 for free. So it's a pretty good ratio.
But what I was leading to there is, so you got all this work going into the actual recording for people to really listen to, maybe on headphones or on nice little speakers, and you are touring like at least half the year. Obviously, you can't take that reverb on tour and to get that sound. So unless you get like a really good writer and some extra budgets, but how do you? Yeah, Switzerland might do it. Yeah, but outside of Switzerland, how do you re-strip those or rearrange those songs for doing them live? Then
we have an amazing mixer, amazing front of house guy who brings everything together amazingly well, and he has a lot of experience in being a nerd as well. So yeah, he's just like kind of incessantly researches what he can do to make us sound great or better. And we do have a lot of the original samples from the track that we recorded on SPD drum pads, so we kind of like play the productions again.
The front of house guy has like an incredibly difficult job because I mean there's just no venue in the world which is like any other, and
yeah, exactly.
I mean, like how much time does he have today, for example?
Well, he takes longer than any other front of house guy in the known universe. Yeah, and
so you're gonna go on at 1 tonight instead of 8, or
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean he's really into the live sound being like, he's like really into the Mad Professor style of live dub mixing. So he's always like working live delays and like with kick triggers and stuff. So I mean we're trying to like recreate a record sound, with but understanding that the live thing can never be the same as the record. So it's about recreating something which is like kind of like hopefully kind of challenging and fun or whatever.
But I mean, it's not only recreating, because on the one hand, you got this nerdism thing for making the ultimate recording, but on the other hand, there's all these people that come to the show to actually enjoy themselves, and those are essentially the ones that are paying your rent for the next 20 years to come, more or less. So what do you offer them?
I think live. We're definitely much more of a live band than we used to be. We used to write our music in the studio and then try and recreate it live, whereas now most of the songs are written and developed kind of on the road and a response to playing in front of an audience. So we definitely try to really engage with the audience and create a reaction. I think one thing that we've noticed is a lot of bands, when they try and perform their music live, when they're a very production heavy band, they'll often rely on using backing tracks and playing along to click tracks and whatever, which is kind of like a kiss of death for us. We're always, there's so many times we've been to see bands whose records are amazing and we see them live and they are so boring. And we're not going to name any names, but it's just like, they're
not on Sub Pop either.
They can't, it's like they can't react to each other. There's the human interaction of which is making music together live is lost because everyone is just listening to a computer. And the way we've kind of struggled with that, which we've found these amazing like these samplers that you can play with drumsticks. So we have all of these, you can put any sound in you want, so we have all of these electronic sounds that usually are coming from a sequencer, but we play them all live with drumsticks. So that's I mean, not to say that what we do is, better than that, but that's our approach of trying to keep the sonic textures that we love from electronic music and sequence music, but make the live performance really be a live thing which is happening between 6 people on stage. Yeah, and can totally fall to pieces at any moment.
Which is kind of exhilarating
nice
for us.
translation there,
Which is key, I think, to seeing a live band. When you know things can go wrong, then it's exciting, and when the possibility of things fucking up is gone, then instantly it's less interesting.
No, the overall runnings of the way things were going over the last past years are actually kind of lucky or beneficial to what you guys are doing to a certain degree, because all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, there wouldn't really have been a market for you, so to speak, probably. But now it may be a lot easier to find some crossover between the indie rock or the club people and so on. And yeah, it seems like the white boy has learned to dance again, and or at least they're trying to.
They're trying. Yeah, I think maybe like websites and magazines and forums that were traditionally indie rock have definitely opened up to embrace hip hop and dance music and whatever. But there's still a kind of, we still find that coming from being labelled as an indie rock band, it's still something we have to kind of struggle against, because we get very much categorized in that, and also a lot of people that are sort of indie rock fans basically won't listen to anything that's not indie rock. So we kind of don't like being called an indie rock band, but at the same time it's great that indie kind of media or whatever is starting to embrace wider types of music. So you're right in that way.
So there's still a bit of time for a bit of shoegazing now and then. And but there you are, you go out on the road, you play in a city that you never played in, and I mean, you just never know what to expect there. Like, can you take us through some typical first 15 moments of getting on stage? Like, the general receptions and maybe the past week or so?
The past week's been good because this is our 6th or 7th US tour. So we've North American tour. Although we haven't always come to Canada, but yes, generally we try to come to Canada. It's just customs. But so we've built an audience which is now really positive. So the US has been great. North America has been great for us in that way. It's still touring in Europe is still a lot more up and down for us, and some places are amazing and some nights you're just like, oh my god, what are we doing? So it's hard to tell often until right before or right during the performance, but the last week has been great.
How do you win over, I guess the worst crowds are usually the industry or journalist kind of crowds who are just like, come on, impress us. And how do you win them over?
Throw things at them.
And have you ever had things thrown at you back?
Yeah, you usually get pelted. It's not uncommon playing festivals to be pelted with something, and usually that's a sign of like someone not being into music more often than not. Which, when you're playing to a crowd of however many people at a big festival, the odds are when you play the kind of music that we play is that the reactions are kind of polar. So, yeah, I mean, for us playing live is the romantic notions of playing live are still there in some way, but because we've played so much, you become very systematic about the way you set up and the way you go about doing what you do, and there's a certain amount of ingredients that have to go right for us to, get our live show feeling special. And, I mean, we've got like 25 channels of crap that our mixer is trying to wrangle, and, like we play live with 3 synthesizers, drum machines, drums, brass, guitars, bass, lots of vocals. So it's like there's a lot of things that have to, blend in order for it to work.
Is that synced in any way, or?
No.
Only by blood and
Vibrations.
when you say you're getting a lot more systematic about it now, no one really wants to end up in a Keith Richards state of mind. And how do you keep that systematic up?
Coffee and tequila.
And Tupperware.
Tupperware.
Sandwiches?
No, cables. Cables in Tupperware. That's the key. Divide all your cables by category and then have a Tupperware container for each one.
So you're taking your old
We have-
cables all the time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have some pretty ridiculous systems for cables, and I mean the longer you go on, the more anal you become about every single detail of your existence.
We have, for example, we have all of our cables with color-coded cable ties, and they all go into a matching coloured bag with our initials on them. So on stage, we know that every cable is in the right place, and etc. And we probably all spend at least an hour a day in the bus reorganising our suitcase. It's just a kind of a weird kind of a weird mania that you get into when you're on the bus for long periods of time.
But I guess it's, I mean, yeah, apart from the pass the time antics there, I guess there's rarely a more annoying thing than when you're on stage and you don't sound the way you want to sound just because of some £2.50 cable, or
Yes.
which would be
quite.
a really cheap cable anyway. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I feel like this interview is turning around into a psychological.
well,
We're going to start breaking down here.
I want you to lay down now and then take us to when you get back from this gig in Europe and you say it's in big up and down. You're in the room, you're in the room, in the room. Now, and so it's up and down. And obviously, after an up gig, it's usually kind of a ride to get back on a bus and go to the next city and all.
If you've had a shower.
Okay, here are the real insights into rock and roll stardom. Showers. So
Average 3 a week.
I feel like we may be getting off it's really boring the hell out of everyone.
it's just a preparation for, it's keeping it real.
Yes.
Real stinky. Like.
Can we play some music to wake everyone up?
Yeah.
We're going to play A-Track's remix of Hard It Races.
Amazing A-Track. With going through the people we wanted to work on the remixes, we really wanted to try and each one to be super different from the last. The next little one, play. This version is I was gonna play. This version was. I talked to DJ Rupture. I don't know if everyone's familiar with him at all, but there's a DJ from Brooklyn, or he lives in Brooklyn currently, who is starting to delve more and more into production, I guess. And I was talking to him about working on this mix, and we wanted to get a vocalist in to do like a ragga version of the track, and so he created an instrumental from the original, and we got in this guy whose name is Lee G, who's done some tracks with I'm not sure how to pronounce Ghislain Poirier, the guy from I think he's from Montreal. So that's where we'd heard his vocals before, and we hooked up with him and went into this studio in Brooklyn, and he rolled this joint, which was about one of the biggest joints I've ever seen, and smoked the whole thing. And he was about 6'5", and he went into this studio and with a window like right in front of the desk where we were sitting, and he did this pretty much this entire take. He did it twice, and that was all. And then he fell over. But it was a pretty phenomenal experience seeing this guy do this vocal take. Actually, sorry, I have to find the right version.
You might Lee G also had a gig for a while. He was on tour with Beyonce, and when she would come out onto the stage, dressed up as what's her name, the Egyptian queen,
Cleopatra.
He would be kind of with his shirt off and oiled up, one of 4 giant slave throne carriers. So he did that for a while
for
too.
3 months
For
in
3
America. His job was to do that, and he would get up. His contract was basically he would get up in the morning, have to go and lift weights for like 3 hours, and then he would go down, set up his the stretcher thing that he carried her on, and then walk out at the start of the show with her on the thing, and that was his job. He 2 hours and then 5 minutes at the end of the night, and he did it for 3 months on the tour with Beyonce, Missy Elliott, and Alicia Keys. So it sounded like a phenomenal experience. Anyway,
that one's up. I've ruled that one out.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty incredible experience working with that guy for us.
Nice job on House Martin's doo-wop as well.
Yeah.
So there you are as a songwriter, and all of a sudden comes in this giant and rewrites your lyrics.
Yeah. It was great. I loved it. He just took I gave him, we gave him the lyrics, and we gave him an instrumental of the original, and he wrote he wrote the lyrics over the top of the instrumental with references to the original lyrics, and yeah, it's awesome.
So, and when you write lyrics, obviously, a lot of bands with the second bigger album, they usually fall into this problem after they've been touring and stuff. Like with the first one, they're getting off most of the things off their chest that they always wanted to talk about, and the second one is, more or less on clubs, airports, mini bars, and maybe, if they're lucky, groupies. And live on the road sucks. And I mean, 95% of their core clientele don't want to.
Yeah. No, I think we're all too neurotic and idiosyncratic in the way that we work to fall into the trappings of trying to write a song about life on the road. Because really we know that it's boring to everyone but us.
So you're trying to, so a good piece of advice would be then to cultivate your neurotisms and...
Well, I think Cameron was talking about the Alan Lomax and how it's the agenda behind writing the music in that certain way has nothing to do with anything besides the music. And then kind of at the other end of the spectrum you have Coldplay. and in the interviews they say, well, we tried to write music that was going to work well in a stadium because, like they have a certain BPM, and when you have the delay on the guitar and, the back row is X meters, so if it's sort of, if the delay is too short, it sounds weird for the people up the back. So, we just want to try and stay more towards the first point than the last point.
Yeah.
Poor Chris Martin.
Yeah, it's true.
Very misunderstood, poor guy. I feel for him.
Shall we take a minute for him?
Yeah.
So a minute for Brian Eno.
So the last version of all of this stuff we wanted to play was a cover that friends of ours from Philadelphia did. They're called Dr. Dog, and they kind of like exist in this world which is kind of 30 years ago, and like a lot of musicians, are into that, the retro thing and referencing and trying to recreate the sound of, a Beatles record or whatever. Like people are always going to be really into that, but these guys kind of live it, and when you meet them, there's no irony involved whatsoever. They're kind of authentically stuck in like 1974, and
It's a pretty good label name as well.
Yeah, totally. And so we're doing a cover in exchange. We're going to do a cover of one of their songs. But
what year will you be stuck in then for that?
yeah, I don't know, probably 1981.
Don't do any of that future 1981 shit. Is that part of the brief?
Yeah. No, there's no brief. So yeah, they did a cover version of our song, which is kind of lush, and this was the way we wanted to try and end our little story of this song.
So you said you got like 10, 15 remixes of that track alone. You got happy people at the record company then? Or you won't ever make any money, or like, how is this gonna work? Like, commercial viability is not really big.
We like to work a lot on a trade basis. So yeah, with a lot of the stuff we do, we just trade with other people. We kind of feel like it's a good way to work for us, and yeah, it means that we get to work with people who want to work with you in return, which is usually a nice thing.
Yeah, but still with the trading, I mean, that means you have to do something in return, which means you have another week or so of your own work time off there. And
Yeah, it's true.
But that's really enjoyable. I mean, it would be nice, ideally, to get paid for all of that, but and hopefully one day it will happen. But it's better than not doing it. Yep.
When you say, it would be nice to get paid for that, like, how many copies did you sell of the first album?
Well, so we've actually released 3 albums.
Yeah.
First album in the
I'm
US.
not really sure. I'd probably the first album probably about 20-something thousand.
The second one?
That's in 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Second one was
like about 80.
Is that including the remixes or
No, that's just the albums.
just? But I mean, including the remix edition or like?
No.
No, the remix edition didn't really sell at all.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. Well, I don't know. I guess in many ways people look at, like, and again for us harks back to being placed in a world which we don't really have the same ideas as. So, like for many people, the idea that like a band that plays, traditional, rock music shouldn't be involved in people that produce dance music or hip hop or whatever. It's kind of like this ridiculous, pigeonholing and like
Apartheid.
yeah, exactly. So when we decided to work with a whole lot of people and create a version of our album which was all the tracks remixed, a lot of people looked upon that as being dirty words. So commercially, not that it was done for commercial reasons, but it didn't really float.
But then outside of
We have a lot of copies if anyone wants a free one. We don't have them here, but write to us.
We'll come
send
to
you
our
one.
show. We have a show tonight, by the way. So hopefully you guys can all come.
So, but a great part of the whole, I mean, you guys live off fans that come to the shows and stuff, and I guess, and
No, we don't.
Like vampires.
Music. That could be the next part of the conversation. Right now, the only way that we can make money off music is by selling music to films and ads. That's the only way you can make money at the moment. Live music is about to die because everyone's decided that bands are getting paid too much and charging too much money, which is then caused because they weren't selling any records. So bands started making their fees higher and touring more, and in doing that, less people are coming to the shows because they're playing more and they're charging more because they can't make any money off record sales. So it's like this domino effect where like musicians, and won't be able to really sustain any form of income unless they're selling songs to Apple or something.
But where in that vicious circle do you, or in the food chain rather, are you at the moment when there's Barbara Streisand with 800 euros a ticket and just that's what you charge in Europe and like?
No, we can't really get away with that.
The world will just be one big reunion to us.
Basically, our tours pay for themselves now, and to an extent, our North American tours pay for our European tours. So our album's released in North America and in Europe and the UK, and also in Japan and Australia. So when we say that the second album sold 80,000, that's cumulative over the whole world. And to fly, there's 10 of us in the bus, with the touring. So if you try and fly 10 people around the world and then rent a bus and have food for everyone and etc., it becomes very, very, very expensive. And but there's, obviously we want to play to everyone, and then there's also pressure from the record company to say, come and do these tours, and it's important that you go and play in Sheffield again and again and again to nobody, which is a horrible experience for anyone. As much as we love Def Leppard. So, I mean, we're at the point where I guess, well, I don't know. It's a deep question. I think we are just doing it and hoping that it's going to sort of take off, and we've got to the point where we're doing it and it's sustainable, but then in a way we can't really stop. Because once we're not touring anymore, then we don't get given dinner, and we don't have anywhere to sleep, and we can't eat any fans. I don't know what I'm talking about, really.
It is really an interesting time to be, in the creative world, because in so many ways there is no rules, and everything is being redefined, and everyone is just kind of trying to work out new ways of working out how to make what they do like financially viable and be able to continue to do that. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas or questions about that.
Does anyone actually really know where they stand about, say, file sharing, for example?
Yeah, I mean that's
like, do you really know what you think? Because I don't. I don't think I've met anyone that really knows where they stand on that. So as an example, and that's something that really directly financially affects us and no doubt all of you, or will in the future. So it's no one knows what the hell is going on, in short.
So, but still, that doesn't really hold you back to do like little extra things for the fans, like a 7-inch here, which was probably the least financially viable thing in the world.
Oh, that's something we wanted to do. I mean, we didn't bring anything because we were really late, so we just jumped out of the bus into a taxi. But we love being able to do 7 inches and LPs and blah blah blah, all of that stuff. But that's kind of, in a way, that's sort of like something from our generation and generations before. But really, a lot of kids that it's like I learned about music going to CD shops and record shops and buying records and coming back with them. But that's not the experience of music for anyone under about 15. It's all in their hand or in their phone or whatever. So that's something that we're kind of coming to grips with, and I think the whole industry is coming to grips with, is how is that, what is that culture, and how is that, how do you, I guess, take advantage of that, but at the same time do something that's interesting and has value for fans. It's it's really challenging.
And I mean, like continuing that also too, talking when A-Track did that mix, I sent him an email saying we're getting it pressed on 12-inch. Do you have a list of people that you would like us to send, records? And he was like, to tell you the truth, like none of my friends play records anymore. Everyone's playing Serato. So it's like to hear that from someone who is like like a world-class DJ saying that like the tool that he learnt and became known on is within the last few years it's just become totally not irrelevant, but like it's obsolete. So it's I mean it's just a strange time for everyone in that respect.
But then on the positive side, the fact that Cameron was living in Brooklyn and we were all living in Melbourne, and we wrote and arranged and produced this whole album without actually being in the same room is an amazing thing, and all the relationships we have with different artists and the collaborations that are possible just by file sharing and using computer software for recording rather than using tapes. I mean, we use tapes in the studio sonically, but then all the editing and stuff is kind of done on the computer. Not going to mention any brand names, but so that's a positive side of what's going on, and there's there's incredible online cultures, and blogs are probably in so many ways so much more exciting and more relevant and more personal to fans than zines and magazines have ever really been. So it's kind of this dual thing, but I think as far as making money from it, that's the real challenge.
So how do you actually afford to still do videos for stuff then?
We tour.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, videos, that's a strange again too, I guess. Like, because in a way, like a lot of people were talking about how something like a video budget has, there's just no point in it anymore because everyone is just watching videos on YouTube and they're compressed to hell anyway. So I think a lot of labels have stopped spending as much money as they would have, except for Kanye. Have stopped spending as much money on videos because there's just no real point in spending hundreds of thousands of dollars making a video clip anymore because people are watching it on their iPod Nano or whatever,
So did you find you had to find different avenues for creating a visual representation of what you are as a band?
No, not really. I mean, the visual element of the way that we work, or the way that we we all come from. A lot of us met at an art school in Melbourne. So, and it was like more of a technology-based art course. So it sort of tied together everything that we do, and be that like I always look at like music as being all art and video and all those things tie together to make what it is that is an artist, or it is a DJ, or is a band, or whatever. Like, so definitely no. Like, I mean, we've always been really into the visual element of what we do.
I mean, you developed some sort of a pretty distinct language there as well. Like, was it all granted to the interdisciplinary approach? Or
That's always been part of what we've done. I mean, when we were first starting out, we did. Cameron did the artwork for the album, and we had friends do the videos.
Always Cameron doing everything. And like, what are all the other people doing?
Sam's doing a lot too.
Sam submitted 5 covers, but they weren't good enough.
So, and that's kind of changed a little bit more recently, I think, just because we don't have as much time because we're on tour so much, and also we want to work with different people. But it's always been, I mean, being in a band is kind of, it's a whole cultural thing. It's like there's not just the music, there's also, and again, that's, I guess, comes from our experience of getting into music is you kind of, you buy the records and you look at the covers and it's kind of a whole package rather than just being, just music abstractly.
So how much of Spinal Tap did you find in your daily lives then?
Only the scene with the cucumber at the airport. No, I mean, we definitely come from the school with I mean, records of like the romance of putting on a record and staring at the cover and being like totally immersed in music is like a beautiful thing. And I hope that in time that kind of survives, because at the moment it really feels like people's relationship to music is very different to what it was 5 years ago. And not that it's worth less, but it just feels like it's more disposable than ever, and I hope that we can work in a way that it comes through and that people still hold on to it in that kind of passionate romantic way that kind of in a way seems to be not defined at the moment.
Like in many areas of life, the whole haptic aspect, kind of haptic and interchangeable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, part of me feels like a real old fogey and dismissive, and I am, and dismissive of, having your whole music library or whatever on your mobile phone and watching TV on something like that, and I kind of like, part of me is just like, oh God, it's horrible, but then part of me also really tries to keep an open mind and try and put myself in, appreciate what it's like for the children, because that hasn't been my experience, but that's really what it's like, and so it's important, I think, to keep an open mind and keep interested in what's going on, because it's just, it's the same conversation that I'm sure people had when television was invented or whatever. It's like, it's not the same anymore, and people are not going to stop talking to each other. And sure, television does stop people talking to each other, but it also, is a beautiful culture into itself in some ways.
The obvious one we saved for almost the end, but Helsinki is about as far away from Melbourne as you could possibly think. So why on earth?
Because it's as far away from Melbourne as you could possibly think.
And why the architecture?
We actually just went to Helsinki for the first time over the summer.
And did the mayor greet you?
No. We were kind of petrified. It was like arriving in a city. It was like meeting someone. It was like we'd had a child that we were meeting for the first time, 20 years later. And we turned up at the town, and
which is pretty rock starish, I guess.
yeah, totally. We turned up at the town, and it was definitely a case of having no idea what to expect. And Australia is an incredibly isolated country, and from a very young age you look at Europe, and you look at America, and they're very exotic and far away lands to us. So the concept for us when we started the band of Helsinki, which I think probably more than one of us when we named the band that didn't even know where Helsinki was, and the buildings in a city that is so far away, and it was just kind of represented something that was mystic and exotic to us, and that
Takatuka land.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's no real reason. None of us are architects. None of us really know anything about architecture.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of uninteresting story.
Any more uninteresting questions, maybe, because these guys need to do sound check and load in and all that kind of, all the more really uninteresting things of being on the road. Right? Watch some more TV.
Yeah.
Yep. But probably on the way there, this is pretty unusual. You're not gonna get onto and do like a 2-hour talk in the middle of a road there. You arrive in a new city, rock and roll realism. Like, what's gonna happen until the show and until you leave the city?
Coffee. Hot dogs. Actually, I'd like to be an advocate of my favorite part of traveling, which is, I don't know if anyone gets into it, but chowhound.com, which is a food forums website, which I use in every city I go to in the world. And it's an incredible resource for finding good restaurants. And, you'll get, like yesterday we were in Ann Arbor in Michigan, so I searched Ann Arbor, Michigan, and there's about 100 posts of people arguing about which restaurant's good and which Korean restaurant does the best barbecue and which. So that for me is my favorite, and all of our favorite kind of way of experiencing a city is through eating. So Chowhound is probably the way which I infiltrate different cultures and their foods.
Yeah, okay. We haven't actually gone that really deep into the discussion of the, music industry at the Academy so far, and I think it's maybe a good thing because it kind of gets a bit depressing. But I just wanted to know for the record, as for, you talked about the internet and stuff like that, how old are you guys? What generation is it?
I'm 28.
27.
33. 26. Okay. So also the next question is, are you bitter?
I think you can tell the kind of.
No, but it's like, you can smell a certain bitterness, but overall. Okay, it's bittersweet. Okay, yeah, thanks a lot.
I'm personally, and I think we're all still excited enough about the actual act of making music, and that's what we get the most joy out of. So it's kind of, it's just making sure that you separate yourself from all that other shit, because it can totally get you down, and you know, I think that we're very conscious of keeping up the positive vibes.
G'day.
G'day.
I've got two questions. The first one's how long has the band been together? And the second is...
Oh, sorry.
And the second one is, you mentioned the Mad Professor before. Do you have a mix from the Mad Professor? Like, did he do a remix or...
Oh, no, I wish. We'll work on that.
Cool. Oh, yeah, so how long have you guys been together? Or?
Well, I guess the band started out... I started playing music in 1999 for the first time. I'd never really written or played any instruments, and so after a few months of writing music, I decided that I was going to try and get together a band to play the songs that I'd written, and the name of that was Architecture in Helsinki. But then over the next few years after that, it was like more like something that happened on the side, you know, when we weren't busy at school or whatever. We would just go, oh, let's do a show. So, I mean, it has existed since then, but, you know, I don't know, on and off, it's changed a lot throughout its time. Like, it's kind of like, you know that game Katamari, where junk ball, which, it's an amorphous blob that kind of like rolls across the horizon, picking up different things along the way.
So,
That's
as
a
you've
Finnish
done,
contribution.
so as there's a lot of remixes of your tracks, so have you done any like remix packages for download or any acapellas or stuff that we could remix?
Yeah, we can hook you guys, whoever wants any parts. We have like 4 tracks of our new record up on our FTP, which we can, if anyone wants to talk to us after, we can give the details.
Okay, nice.
We'll talk to Wolf or Torsten and put the details for our FTP server up, and you can download. I think we have most of the tracks have already been released, but there's one that we might be releasing another single, so you never know.
Always on search.
Well, that's some very effective 21st century A&Ring, even without internet in the first place. Yeah. So you might go and shake hands first, and then you know who is.
We don't want to meet you. We don't want to meet you.
It's getting too personal.
Yeah, that's right. Let's IM now. We've got the computer here.
Yeah, we're not ready for that sort of commitment yet.
That's right.
More questions, Mo? But yeah, before we let you go on to your other commitments, maybe a song or two from the first album to send everyone off, and on the since we're old bitter dance folks.
We could play we'll play 2 things. This is a remix that we did for a Brazilian group called Banche do Rolê. We just did this a few months ago, so this is an example of a remix that we did for someone else.
There's some of the same steel drum session found its way in there as well.
that was the steel drum recording of 30-minute solo. We cut a little bit out of it for that track.
We just kind of dig through and find notes that work, and then, you know, it's great having like solid steel drums on file.
We'll sell them to you very cheap.
If you need an F sharp steel drum.
This track, I guess, which was the last thing we were going to play, was a remix that we just got a few weeks ago from a UK amazing freak artist called Max Tundra. This is a remix he did of our latest single. It's called Hold of Me.
Yeah, for after all these remixes, I would very much like to end it all on some original material, maybe.
Sure.
And yeah, I think the Whirlwind track was a bit of a favorite for
I don't know if
many people. And
try and find it.
but not without. I guess we're not gonna play it without. Finally saying that after being in Melbourne for 6 weeks and having had no chance to get you guys in, because surprisingly enough, you were touring again. Last year, glad that we had to go to the other end of the world again to make it happen. And
It's great to be here.
yeah, and please give a warm thank
Thanks
you
for
to
having
the
us.
Architecture. Yeah, and what is it that we gonna hear as the last one?
I'm embarrassed to say the only version I have of this song is a very low res MP3. So I could play. Yeah.
Do the lower end MP3 and
Yeah,
we'll finally
okay.
see what these speakers do to MP3s.
That's right.